Hey everyone, I'm Nicole.
And I'm Gabrielle.
And we are the hosts of the Spiritual Sisters podcast.
Join us every week as we discuss all the spiritual topics like astrology, mediumship, psychic insights, and so much more.
We are often joined by others we have met along our spiritual journey who are well versed in many of these areas.
Get ready for enlightening discussions and interviews and personal experiences that we hope will expand your mind and get you thinking outside of the box.
Whether you're a seasoned spiritual seeker or just beginning your spiritual journey, there's something here for everyone.
Check us out every Tuesday wherever you get your podcasts. See you then.
Bye!
Hi, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the Soul Ecosystem Podcast. This is your host, Anna Rising, and on this podcast, we discuss everything soul contracts. I have 2 soul contracts for you today that we are going to be looking into, and this was brought on by me recently watching Mariska Hargitay's documentary, My Mother Jayne, that she recently put out. I believe it was either on Prime or on Max. But I watched it and it was so incredibly touching and moving. And it was about her mother and how her mother grew up, her mother's life story, and then her tragic passing and how that impacted Mariska and kind of the after effects of that it had on Mariska. And it was incredibly moving. So I said to myself, I have to look up both of their soul contracts because there was one thing that stood out to me in that documentary that as soon as I heard it, I'm like, that's a generational cycle. Like, that needs to be looked into, that needs to kind of be unpacked, because there is definitely something repeating there for her that I think ended with Mariska's incarnation. I think she was able to do a takeaway for herself to not repeat those same mistakes. But let me tell you guys what that was. So, as she started to explain her mother's upbringing, she brought up the fact that her father passed away when Jayne was only 3 years old. Her father died in a car accident, and Jayne and her mother were in this accident that caused her father's death. And I thought that that was too big of a coincidence that Mariska Hargitay was also 3 and also in the car accident that ended her mother's life. I absolutely loved this documentary, and if you guys are really big on documentaries, especially surrounding tragedies or surrounding life stories, I highly recommend that you guys take a look at this one. It was so beautifully made. I loved how artistically Mariska brought to life all of her past memories. It was so beautiful. And it did not surprise me in the least to see that her soul contract had the Fairy World Writer Director program. That subconscious program kind of denotes that a person is absolutely brilliant when it comes to being when it comes to writing, when it comes to directing. They're excellent at putting their words on paper. They are excellent at manifesting their visions onto the screen. Some of the best writers and directors of our time have this program. And whenever I come across a celebrity that has this program that hasn't really explored writing or hasn't really explored directing, I'm like, I know that if they did pursue it, if they did have a desire to pursue that path, they would be absolutely wonderful at it. And Mariska is one of those people. She's incredibly talented, as is Jayne Mansfield, her mother. Jayne Mansfield, and I learned this in the documentary, spoke like 5 or 6 languages. She knew a lot of languages. She played a lot of different instruments. She was absolutely brilliant, and her soul contract attests to that because she has the subconscious program academic knowledge. So this is somebody that is an intellectual, being book smart comes very easy to them, and Mariska spoke a lot to how brilliant her mother was. When we look at Jayne Mansfield's soul contract, I can see the themes popping up that Mariska talked about for Jayne. There are a lot of subconscious programs going on for her, and a lot of them are red flags. I have learned not to have a very strong response to the binge program. This is a subconscious program that shows up a lot, and it speaks to a person doing something in excess in order to pacify themselves or brings comfort to themselves in some way. And it manifests differently for everyone. It doesn't necessarily mean this person is turning to drugs and has an addiction. It just means that they don't know when to stop sometimes using certain things. And too much of anything could be potentially harmful. Some things are more fatal than others, but in Jayne Mansfield's case, there was indication of abusing alcohol. Mariska kind of touched on that a little bit in the documentary. So for Jayne, alcohol was her vice. And when you listen to her story, you kind of understand where this is coming from. Jayne passed away at the young age of 34. And the relationships that she's had, a lot of them were very unhealthy. Some of them were abusive. There may be some unhealthy attachment patterns for her that I think stem from this loss. In her soul contract, we see that her approach to life, the way she goes about her life, is one of suffering. So, a person with a strategy of suffering is someone that tends to live in a victim mentality, considers themselves a victim, considers themselves to kind of be a step down from everybody else, almost like in a disabled way. Like she feels that growing up without a father really limited her in a way. And this kind of person seeks to compensate by helping others while limiting themselves, while ignoring their own needs. So they'll go out of their way to assist others, to help others, to their own detriment. And signs this is happening is having a victim mentality, having willingness to help someone, even though you don't have what it is that they need. There's also this lack of acceptance of somebody else's suffering. They have a hard time believing or even like holding space for someone that is suffering because they're always suffering. They push past their suffering and they wear that suffering as a badge of honor. They think that because they suffer so much and they just push through and keep self-sacrificing, that everybody else needs to do the same. It's kind of this situation where it's like, it's the parent that says, you don't know what suffering is. Like, I've suffered. If I can do this and this, then you can do this and this. So there's this lack of empathy for anyone else because of how hurt and how in bad shape they are. This also attracts relationships where they see their partner as their savior, and they feel they owe something to this partner because they got them out of some kind of situation. And it's really telling of their own like insecurities, how insecure this kind of person is, because they feel that there is something that is hard to tolerate, they're hard to be with, they're hard to deal with. So anybody that takes that on, they're like, oh my goodness, this person like is in a relationship with me, chose to be in a relationship with me, knowing I have all of these problems, like that's so big of them. Like they really, really get down on themselves and see the people that come into their life romantically as almost like this higher person. And I can easily see how that would manifest as abusive relationships because their self-worth is very, very low. And they stay because they feel like they owe it to that person to stay because of how they've saved them. This kind of person also regularly seeks compassion. I feel like that's really big for them. I'm getting the sense that she was likely in a constant state of fight or flight, and anything could have triggered her to have a breakdown. And she liked to use this as an excuse to be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm really like at this point. But that like being on edge like that was constant. That was a constant thing for her. So instead of kind of trying to de-escalate and kind of take the edge off of her suffering and everything that she was going through, again, she used the suffering as a badge of honor and used it to excuse her behaviors. I don't want to go in right off the bat kind of coming at her neck because I think that it takes incredible strength and power to go from where she was, how she grew up, to being a Hollywood star. She was in so many movies. I remember turning this documentary on with my husband, and he was asking me, why does that name sound familiar? I'm like, she's Mariska Hargitay's mom. And then he looked Jayne Mansfield up on IMDb, and there was just like he kept scrolling and scrolling and scrolling through movies. She was in a lot of things. And she got to Hollywood, I believe, at the age of 19 with a 3-year-old. She married a very religious man at the age of 16, had a baby, and she really wanted to be in Hollywood. So she convinced him to move to California. Only this religious husband thought that they would eventually leave California and go back to I think it was Texas, but don't quote me on that. And she didn't want to leave. So he ended up leaving on his own. He left her and her daughter in California. And she was incredibly hardworking. She picked up as many jobs as she possibly could, and she took what she could get at that point in order to survive and to feed herself and her child. So I am really in awe of Jayne Mansfield. I think she was absolutely brilliant, but was carrying a lot of pain. One of the positive subconscious programs she has is the High Spiritual Unification Mission. This is a mission that I see in people that come to me all the time that book readings with me. I'm seeing it more and more, and essentially it means that this person has a way of uniting others. This person has a way of gathering like-minded people and uniting them, and that is a very powerful mission to have. This is someone that has a lot of ideas, great communication, great charisma. And if they use these talents for good, they can create something beautiful, something that brings people together. If they choose to use it towards selfish purposes or becoming more powerful, you could see this manifesting as somebody that's conspiring to commit illegal things and involving a lot of people in doing so, someone that starts wars, and various things like that. The next thing I did when looking into Jayne Mansfield's soul contract is look at the numerology for the year she died. She passed away when she was 34. Did I mention that? And it was just a few months after she turned 34. So when I say that I look at the numerology of that age of the year that she was 34, I look into the positive and the negative manifestations of the numbers in her chart. And specifically, I look for any indication that there is some kind of tragic accident for that year, seeing as that is how she died. And she has the number 7, the number 14, and the number 20 for those years. 7 in the positive denotes good news, offers, new ideas, opportunities, useful trips, promotion, career. In the negative, there's a possibility of various obstacles, delays, tension, problems in business, risk of car accident, danger with transport, unsuccessful or failed trips. So that's the energy of number 7. The number 14 also kind of speaks to alcohol addiction. That is how it manifests in the negative sometimes. So I wonder if that was still something she struggled with, because I believe it was something Mariska brought up that started to happen after her divorce from Mariska Hargitay, but don't quote me on that. The negative energy of the number 20 predicts excessive workaholism, arguments in the family, a breakup, loss of family business, serious illnesses. And I believe that it was on this road trip that they were on as a family. It was Jayne Mansfield in the car, her then boyfriend, and I think 3 of her children. She had called her ex-husband, Mariska Hargitay, when they stopped at a gas station, saying that she was fighting with her boyfriend, which is absolutely crazy, but not surprising because this is the boyfriend that was abusive towards her. And she told Mickey that they had like an hour left of the drive. And that was the last time Mickey spoke to her. When we look at Mariska Hargitay's chart and the numerology in her past life, we see that in a past life there was infidelity in the family. And it's interesting to note that there was a whole scandal, that there was a question of who Mariska Hargitay's father was. Some rumors start flying around that it wasn't Mickey, that it was Nelson Sardo, who was a performer in Las Vegas. So that cycle of there being infidelity and a lot of pain, a lot of turmoil and trauma in the family continues. It repeats in this incarnation. And the difficult thing about growing up in a situation like that, in a family with this kind of history, with this kind of background, is that it kind of makes people lose faith in love and makes them very closed off to giving love and to believing in love. So the lesson for her in that past life was to learn to love unconditionally, to know that it exists. This is not to mean that you put up with cheating or abuse. The takeaway for her is that not all relationships are like this, that there could be healthy ones, and that there are ways to find healthy partners. Which, by the looks of it, Mariska managed to learn because she has been married to her spouse, Peter Herman, since 2004. And they have 3 children together. And it was at the end of this documentary that her husband presented her with her mother's old piano. He managed to find it either at auction or somehow he bought it and presented it to her. And this is another part of Mariska's story, which is very heartbreaking. That when her mom passed away, she had a lot of debt. And that debt was settled by selling all of her possessions to the highest bidder, basically at auction. There was very little that Mariska and her brothers and sister had from their mom left because it was all taken away and it was all sold. One of the items that the brother managed to keep was a pair of little booties from when Jayne Mansfield was still a baby. And he actually pulled them out of his safe and showed it to Mariska as one of the items that he had left with his mom. Mariska Hargitay, when you take a look at her subconscious programs, they're very interesting because it's like a timeline of what happened in her life. You could see it, you could pinpoint what's happening when, because there is a subconscious program called shame. And this could very easily have been when it was kind of exposed that Mickey Hargitay isn't really her father, that it could be somebody else. And that was such a huge blow for Mariska to even hear something about this. Because the first time she heard about it was at the age of 25. And it was almost entirely by chance. Books about her mom, any stories about her mom, because her dad told her not to. He's like, Mickey Hargitay told her it's a bunch of lies, it's a bunch of rumors, all they do, they just want to tear her down, whatever. So she took it to heart, and she's like, okay, I won't read them. And she found out by chance when she went to a Jayne Mansfield like fan club thing where they were celebrating, I believe, her birthday or something, or some kind of anniversary. And the host asked her about Nelson Sardelli, who was her biological father. And she didn't understand why he was asking her about him. And I believe this host showed her a picture of Nelson Sardelli. And there was just this knowing for her that this person is the male version of me, she said. Mariska said that when she approached her father with this, she was crying. She was in a state, she was absolutely heartbroken because there's something in her that's telling her that, hey, this might be true. And it explained so much from her childhood why she felt a little bit left out. She wouldn't go with the family to their European vacations. She would be sent to her grandma's while Mickey and Mariska's stepmom and her brothers would go on vacations together. So she confronted her dad about this with a lot of pain, with a lot of anguish. She was crying. And when she asked him about this, he started asking her, who told you this? That is ridiculous. You are my child. And he said that with such pain in his own voice that Mariska instantly knew that no matter how much pain she's experiencing right now, how betrayed she feels right now, her father is carrying it like 10 times more. She explains that it was extremely, extremely difficult for him. So she never brought it up with him again. I believe it was only after his passing that she searched for her biological father, Nelson Sardelli, and they started growing their relationship and speaking with each other. And it's incredibly touching, guys. If you want to watch this, look into it. I strongly recommend you doing so. I feel like I've spoiled it a little bit for you guys, but it turns out that Nelson knew that she was his, and he stepped down and didn't claim her after Jayne Mansfield's passing because he saw that Mariska Hargitay claimed her as his own. And he explained that you had just lost your mother. Your world came crumbling down around you. He's like, I couldn't have made it crumble more by admitting that your father isn't your father, that the person you think is your father isn't your father. So I just thought that it was so beautiful on both Nelson's and Mickey's part to take care of Mariska in that way. I'm not sure that we have a place to say if that was right or wrong. I believe that they both loved Mariska so much that they did the best that they could in that moment for her. When we take a look at Jayne Mansfield's personality in the numerology we see there, we see the numbers 4 and 19. So 4 is a number that I don't like to mess around with. If you were born in April, you're going to have that number in your chart. But it's usually when it's in your date of birth, the number 4, that it starts doing really freaky things. I've spoken to it in previous episodes, so I'm only going to touch on it just a little bit. Essentially, when you think of the number 4, you think of somebody that has the ability to be either an extremely good person, extremely kind person, or an extremely evil and sadistic person. This is the number of extremes. This is a wild card. You need to be careful with people that were born on the 4th because they are very much likely either the best person that you've ever known or the worst. So think Jekyll and Hyde, think Mother Teresa versus P. Diddy. You know, those are the kind of energies that we are playing around with, the kind of extremes that it could go from. So while she has that energy in her chart, it's manifesting more of a source of power. Her source of power, what she draws her inspiration from, instead of in the extreme we see when it is a person's actual day of birth. So it's like it's a little diluted because I've noticed that the people that are born on the 4th, this manifests much stronger and much more extreme. The number 19 is kind of like a showbiz number. This is a person that loves to be in the center of attention. This is a person that loves a parade, a spectacle, likes to parade themselves around, likes the spotlight to be on them. So she was made for this screen. This is somebody that's very passionate and very dedicated. They are not one to shy away from sacrifice. They understand that sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do to get by. You gotta do what you gotta do to make it to the top. So very ambitious. And there's a lot of potential, a lot of financial success available for people that were born on the 19th. When you take a look at Mariska's personality, the numerology we find there is the number 5 and 1. So one is leader, natural leader, leadership energy. This is why she is so charismatic and so good at leading, so good at talking to people. If you guys have ever heard any of her speeches, it's absolutely amazing. She has such a sharp mind and intellect and can utilize that to manifest her desires into the material almost immediately. When we see the number 5, this is a person that is very family oriented, very big on family, very strong relationships and bonds with family and children. They value that very highly, and it's a huge role in their life. It is a role that they were born to play. It also speaks to having very good public speaking abilities. When we talk about generational curses like parents dying when kids are very young, or in this case, when they are exactly 3 years old, it reminds me of a client session I just had with somebody this week. That was kind of the inspiration to this episode because it felt like it wasn't an accident that I watched this documentary and had this insanely profound session in the same week. In this particular session, we looked into an ex of a client. She wanted to look into a past life of theirs. And the thing about this past life was that in a past life, they were not in a romantic relationship. She was his parent. She was a mother, and she passed away early when he was in his teens. He was very eager to go and get her education or seek better financial opportunities than he grew up with. And in his haste, he wasn't around for his mother that much. He was very ambitious and he was really seeking to better their lives, to give more opportunities for his family when it was time for him to have one than the opportunities that were given to him. He really wanted to take care of his mom and provide for his mom, and ended up missing a lot of time with her that he could have had he stayed on their farm and been satisfied with growing up on a farm. So even though he was there in her final moments, she got sick and she got worse really fast, and then she passed away, and it was something that he could never forgive himself for. His takeaway in his past life was that he should have been successful faster. He should have become more rich faster, because then they'd be able to afford a doctor that would have been able to take care of her and she wouldn't have passed away. But that was the wrong takeaway from this soul lesson. And I told my client this past life, and it didn't really click for her until a little bit later. She's like, "Oh my God, by the way, his mom passed away when he was in his 20s. She got really sick. She had cancer and she passed away." And I'm like, that's the cycle repeating itself. He still hasn't learned this lesson. And now he's kind of pursuing this relationship with her unknowingly because he's trying to get that closure that he didn't have in the life before. He keeps thinking that if he throws money at it, he keeps thinking that if he provides and gets the house of her dreams and gets this and this and this and this, that it's going to be enough of a connection in order to keep them together. But there is no connection in the material. There is no amount of material things that can buy back time. And it was really interesting to see that manifesting in this incarnation, even though they didn't have the same roles, that theme was still playing out. And this is this was an opportunity for him to realize the importance of an emotional connection and the importance of quality time, the importance of connecting with someone, spending time with them, making memories instead of acquiring material things. And it's not something his soul has learned yet. In Jayne Mansfield's and Mariska's case, I truly believe that there is this importance to set down the past. And it was something that Jayne could not let go of. She couldn't get past the loss of her father. She couldn't get past that missing piece of her without making it her identity, without making it be a part of her so much that she sought it in every relationship. Mariska is kind of the cycle breaker here, because she was able to come to terms with, yes, my family looks a little bit different, and yes, I'm carrying a lot of pain from what has happened, but it doesn't define me. And this is something very profound for somebody carrying the energy of the number 5 in their personality. This is something very, very profound, because 5s have a very difficult time not seeing the world in black and white, not being idealists. I think the reason that she agreed to experience this kind of betrayal, this kind of huge lie in her incarnation this time around, is precisely to soften her enough to realize there's no black and white. Life is so complex and people are so complex, and everybody is doing the best that they possibly can, the best they know how to do at the time. So I think it was meant to really, really soften her and help the idealistic tendencies break apart. So that's the little bit I have for Mariska and Jayne's soul contracts. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you for your support. I hope you guys have a wonderful 4th of July and have a great weekend.